Hey everybody, today I'm out here in Tucson, Arizona with my friend Sofyan Bey, and he's going to tell you why he likes the RAV4 Hybrid a bit more, and I'm going to tell you why I like the CR-V Hybrid a bit more, even though there are pros and cons to both, right?
Yeah, I mean, they both have their strengths and weaknesses. I like how this one is a little quicker. It has some nicer features, but it is more expensive.
It is, but let's talk about the looks up front. So they both have standard LED headlamps. What do you think about the looks of the RAV4? I actually think this looks better to me.
I agree. Actually, when this car first came out last year, I thought they literally copied the front end of the Honda.
It kind of did.
It has similar shaped headlights.
It's a little trucky too. It's got like that mini Tacoma thing.
Right, like because they wanted it to look a little bit like Toyota's trucks. What I don't like about the RAV4 is the fact that you have an incandescent turn signal and then you have projector halogen fog lights, because the Honda gives you full LEDs.
Everything is LEDs over here in this guy, but they're reflectors, not projectors, which I have to say I think is a little bit sad. But we do have LED fog lamps down below. And I think that the overall look is definitely elegant. I just like the slightly truck-shaped look of the RAV4 just a little bit better.
The one thing that I don't like about the CR-V when they refreshed this car, they kind of gave it braces at the front end with this weird silver accent at the lower fascia. I don't really like
I'm kind of okay with that somehow. It's like, I think the RAV4 is a little bit more attractive, but I like the look of the CR-V overall. But what do you think about the side profile? The mini truck thing definitely seems to be still going on there in the RAV4. And this, I think you described earlier, as sort of like a compact minivan in terms of overall styling.
Yeah, I mean, the RAV4 has a boxier shape. Toyota wanted that more rugged look. This, again, you know, looks very crossover-ish like, but this is actually the bigger vehicle, which surprised me.
It is, yeah.
It's about 2 inches, almost 2 inches longer, but the wheelbase is shorter. They both have right around 8 inches of ground clearance, but I don't really think people who buy these are going to be taking these off-road. But you do have
the big difference there, of course, is that this one has a mechanical all-wheel drive system, not the e-all-wheel drive system, which we'll talk about in a bit. And we used to have more cargo room in the back of the CR-V, but it got hybridized. So
it's got a little smaller.
Let's take a look in the back here.
So Honda says you get around 33 cubic feet of space in this car with the seats up. That dropped it by about 6 cubic feet.
Yeah, it was a pretty big. And then if we lift up this little floor here, no spare tire under there, no extra storage. Instead, we get a can of Fix-A-Flat. That's all we get back there. And in the RAV4 Hybrid, as I have proved, because we have a long-term RAV4 Hybrid back at home, not only do we have a spare tire and extra storage back here, we actually fit a full-size spare tire back there ourselves. So
really?
we got a full-size spare tire off eBay.
That is a huge selling feature
Jammed
for a
it in
lot
there,
of people.
yeah.
And you also get 37 cubic feet of space, so about 4 more versus the Honda. But if you fold the seats down, they're roughly the same, around 69.
Yeah, because this one has a slightly smaller cargo area than the regular CR-V. And of course, this one, they put the battery under the rear seats because it's a brand new platform. It was designed for the hybrid right from the very beginning. And in the CR-V, there was nowhere for the battery to go.
Under the floor.
Under the floor.
And that's why we have less space.
And then we get less space on the side because the cooling system for the battery, it has ducts there in the side, and that kind of cut down on space as well. So let's dive under the hood now. So both of these are hybrids, but their hybrid systems are quite different. This one has a bigger engine under the hood.
Yeah, so this is a 2.5 liter engine. It's a half liter bigger, and it actually is the more powerful option, which surprised me. Typically, Honda is the one that has more power.
Yeah.
219 combined horsepower. Unfortunately, Toyota doesn't talk about the torque figure, so we don't know how much torque it makes.
We've always guessed it's about 220 pound-feet or so.
Which would be similar to this because this has 212 horsepower. It's a 2-liter four-cylinder. The four-cylinder on its own only makes like 143 horsepower, which is like 50 less than that.
The engine itself is less powerful, but it has a bigger electric motor and a bigger battery. But I think the key thing with the CR-V to keep in mind, and we'll talk about this in the performance part, but key thing to remember about this one is that for most driving situations, 181 horsepower is really all you're going to get. Now, Honda disputes that because Honda says that the engine can produce 143 horsepower, the battery can produce 87 horsepower out of the battery, and it can feed that in, but it's driving a 181 horsepower electric motor. So some of this is semantics. They're saying the system total is 212, and yes, there are some times where you could get 212, but for the most part out there, people are going to be getting 181 horsepower and 232 pound-feet of torque.
Just
and
from the
in
electric
Toyota,
motor.
it's going to be 219. And Honda would like us to say that there is some mechanical loss going on there, but this is still slower.
Yeah. Well, I think you said 8.3, 0 to
8.4 seconds is what we got in this one, out here in Tucson. Admittedly, this is not at home, but the weather's not too far apart, and we're not that high above sea level. And this guy right over here did not manage to be Toyota's performance option at the moment. They kept claiming this was going to be faster than the gasoline model. It wasn't in our test, but it still got 7.4, so it's a second faster.
Yeah, and actually, you also mentioned this was a second slower versus the gas version of
That's
the
true.
CR-V.
Yeah, the gas version of this is the peppier one, and it's what, 180 horsepower?
190.
190.
But
yeah.
So that's very surprising. I'm going to attribute that because
sense.
this is about 200 pounds heavier than the gas model.
Right.
And such. And then Honda, you said that with their complex, transmission with this car. It's got that CVT, but it's also a direct drive, but it kind of depends on where you...
Got to watch the video on that one. I would argue that actually both of these hybrid systems are very simple. This one is 2 motors and 1 clutch.
Okay.
That one's 2 motors and 1 planetary gear set. So both of these are more likely to be more reliable than their gasoline-only counterparts. That's probably going to be more reliable than the 8-speed one. This should be more reliable than the CVT that's available in the base model.
Now, we should talk about fuel economy because the CRV gets 40 in the city and 35 on the highway and 38 combined. Those are very, very good numbers until you come to the RAV, which gets 41, 38 and about 40 combined. So
I think the key thing here is the 35 versus the 38.
Oh, no, this is...
Yeah, the 35 miles highway.
Yeah, right.
And the 38 highway on the RAV4. That's the big difference.
So what have you been getting in the real world with yours?
A real world test, we've been averaging between 38 and 39, depending on who's been driving it.
Okay.
And how fast they've been going. So out on the open highway, both of these options, you're going to get below the EPA score. If you're driving 75 or 80 miles an hour, or if you're in Texas and you're driving 85, both of them are going to be below EPA. But the CRV, its hybrid system, based on our experiences in the Accord, I would expect this to be below the RAV4 in real world driving. And the EPA numbers definitely seem to bear that out, just due to the overall design. But very efficient in the city for both of them. So if you do a lot of stop and go traffic or slow and go traffic, there's probably not going to be a lot of difference.
Yeah, well, this is the best time to buy hybrids if you are constantly in city traffic.
Yes.
This is going to be driving, both of them will be driving on electric power alone. I do think the Honda's electric power is much torquier from a start.
It is. So much more torque. There's a lot of torque out of it, and it's very well controlled because it has a mechanical all-wheel drive system. That's the key difference. This one will send power to the rear wheels mechanically. The RAV4 Hybrid has an all-wheel drive system or an electric motor on the back. And the big thing there is that it just can't send as much power to the rear axle as this CRV Hybrid can. Now, theoretically, in a theoretical world where the front wheels had 0 traction and that clutch pack was locked up, this could theoretically send 100% of power and torque to the rear wheels. The RAV4, unfortunately, never can. But I have to say, we were just out on that rodeo course that they had us drive. I was actually really impressed with the way the RAV4's all-wheel drive system worked out on that course.
As long as it has a full charge, right?
As long as it has a full charge, But it did a lot better on that course. And actually, I have to say, in our other videos where we took the mild off-roading, the RAV4's all-wheel drive system is significantly better than the first generation. It's not as good as this, but it's significantly better than a lot of people think. Now, on the inside, I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag between the two. I like some aspects of both. I like the design of the Honda better than the RAV4, but I think parts quality is pretty equal. And this screen's way bigger than especially the base model, because we get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto now right in the base RAV4, and it's optional in the CRV, which I think is a bummer, and the base screen's really tiny.
I like the overall look. I like how this is kind of a tablet style screen. I know some people don't like that, but I think it looks much more modern.
I like that look overall, I have to say.
Yeah, and like you said, the materials are pretty similar. I mean, they both kind of have a slightly digital display, although I think the CRV has a full digital display for the hybrid model now. The one thing I am noticing, the Honda has way more storage space.
It does.
I mean, the RAV4...
We have some kind of convenient space, but like in here, this is way smaller.
Right, because you don't have that massive bin like you get in the CRV.
Yeah.
You do have your wireless charger here, which is kind of similar to where Honda puts theirs. But like in terms of overall like packaging with the space, the Honda definitely wins. But it also kind of feels a little bit like a minivan at times to me.
It's kind of. I like the steering wheel a bit better than the Hondas. I like the way the buttons are laid out. They finally ditched that little turn, stock for the cruise control
that they've been using
Thank
for
God
like 20 years.
Right, it's on the wheel right now. So I think that looks a little better in my mind.
I also like the features in this car. So we have heated and cooled seats. You can't get that in the CRV. You have a panoramic sunroof, which is also nice. And when you put this car in reverse, 360 camera. You can't even get that on the CRV. So again, that's stuff that Honda typically reserves for Acura, and I like how Toyota's putting that in
But no real leather. These seats are all imitation cow.
Oh, that's right, the Softex, which I don't mind them.
I don't mind it too much. It doesn't breathe as well as the leather in the CRV. I'm surprised that actually Honda calls this a feature, because Toyota calls this a feature, because they say that some hybrid people out there, some hybrid shoppers, are actually wanting vegan leather or whatever you want to call imitation leather, rather than getting the real thing.
I would argue that that's true.
Yeah.
I would really argue that that's true. So I think that obviously they both have their strengths and weaknesses. I think this is slightly snug feeling on the inside.
It is. Let's get in the back seat, because that's I think the big difference in my opinion. Now, hopping in the back seat, I think it's also kind of a pros and cons things. We have a lot less legroom in here than we get in the CRV. That's the big thing.
Yeah, I think we have about 2 inches less legroom. Toyota says like 37.5, which is still pretty good.
This front seat is not adjusted for a taller person, obviously, but if it was, I wouldn't have as much room. And we couldn't fit rear-facing child seats in here when we were testing them if I was up front, but I could in the CRV.
Well, the CRV, I noticed the rear doors also open a lot bigger.
They open a little farther.
So you definitely get more space. The floor is also almost completely flat in the Honda, but you do do get things like the vents, the USB ports. Toyota also puts some soft touch materials on the door panels, and you get heated back seats back
We
here.
do get heated rear seats, and we don't have a center seat belt coming out of the ceiling. It comes out of the seat back. Ooh. That's an awful lot more convenient, I think, because that takes up a lot of cargo room in the back if you're trying to put something really boxy in. And if you put child seats right here in the middle and the seat belt's coming out of the ceiling, they kind of end up to one side or the other. Makes it less convenient for people to sit next to it. Now here in the CR-V, I have to say I like the overall design of this interior a little bit better. Just the styling, the imitation wood trim doesn't bother me at all. I like it. I like the overall style, but some of these components feel a little bit older. Like this infotainment system definitely is tiny.
Well, it's like it's a 7-inch. It's only an inch
only
smaller,
an inch smaller, but somehow it feels smaller.
I think it's because all this unused black plastic here just makes it look very small. Like Honda could get rid of this and make this like a 10-inch display.
And we still have the touch buttons. And the big thing for me is CarPlay and Android Auto are still optional, which I think is really kind of sad. So over here we have, a slight variant on the full LCD cluster. There's still some, non-LCD elements on each side. The steering wheel, I really like the paddles on the back. I wish Toyota would do that because this one has regen paddles. You can select between 4 different levels on the steering wheel. But the steering wheel has their older design where they used to have that little touchy thing there for the volume knob. And then we have the push button shifter here. I don't dislike the push button shifter, but I have to admit that if we're going to use this to save space, why can't I use any of this other space? Like
some additional storage.
Yeah, if I was going to have a push button shifter, that should all be some enormous cargo area.
I also wish Honda kind of broke up this sea of black plastic here. It looks a little bit cheap. Maybe put some aluminum trim here would look a bit nicer. But I disagree with you. I hate the plastic wood grain.
Hate the plastic wood grain?
It looks really tacky for me, and then when you touch it, it feels very cheap. So I'm not a fan of the plastic wood.
And we have a lot of storage here. So this huge center console here if you go over there.
And they also redesigned this so you can kind of basically fold that down and cover it up if you'd like.
Yep.
Made it a lot easier to use this year, which is nice. And really, you could hide a lot of stuff in here.
A lot of practical stuff,
yeah. I mean, this interior, way more practical, but then there are times where I feel like I'm driving a minivan because there's so much storage.
And no panoramic moonroof.
Yeah,
just a regular
the lack
moonroof.
of panel roof, and then no cooled seats, no 360 camera on this car, which would have been nice to have, but again, Honda wants you to buy an Acura to get all that stuff.
But I do like these front seats. I think they're more comfortable than the ones in the RAV4, and they have 4-way lumbar support, which I really like. And I think you like these seats better too, right?
I think the seats in this car feel a little bit more comfortable. You get more space in this car. I mean, instantly just getting out of the RAV4 into this car, there's a more airier greenhouse in here. The windows feel like they're a little bit larger, so you get a little bit better visibility in here.
Honda giveth and Honda taketh away back here. I like the style again. I actually like the wood trim again. And we have some squishy bits here on the door, but the top part of the door sill is hard.
And it even has the fake stitching on it, and it's hard touch plastic.
And the windows don't roll all the way down.
Yeah, I'm surprised by it because the windows are larger in this car versus the RAV, and I'm like, why doesn't this go all the way down? That really makes me sad.
But we get so much more room back here. I mean, I've got a ton of headroom. Look at that back here. And I've got 9 inches of legroom between my knees and this front seat that's pretty comfortably adjusted for me.
Yeah, so Honda says Honda says just under 40 inches of legroom, so that's almost 3 more than the RAV, and the floor is almost completely flat. Rear seat air vents and USB ports, but no heated rear seats.
Very sad. And then of course, the seat belt comes out of the roof, which again takes up all this space that you could use for a bigger box or something there. But the seats are pretty comfortable overall. And I have to say, I like this color gray a little bit better than the sort of taupey thing that Toyota has going on. That's kind of a off-white. It looks a little bit, I don't know, dingy is not the right word, but just looks old somehow. And the gray looks a little bit more clean and a little bit more modern to me. So how do you feel about them out on the road? We've already talked about how the RAV4 is faster than the CR-V, but other than that, how do you feel about them?
I mean, I definitely think that the RAV4, it's nice how this is faster. This is, for me, the softer car.
It is, a little bit softer.
It's a little softer. The steering's not quite as responsive, which is fine in this segment. That's what people really want.
And the CR-V seems to handle a little bit better. It does have wider tires. I don't have a skid pad, so I can't say for sure, but it seems like it handles better. And I think I like the overall feel out on the road a bit more. And I was a little surprised that this was faster in a way because I like the way that hybrid system feels a little better than this one. But yeah, it was noticeably slower.
Yeah, because the CR-V feels quick off the line because it has the stronger electric motor. But then when you go into the top end, it really falls on its face. It doesn't feel quite as fast, whereas this car is a little laggy off the line, but really at the top end, you'll hear the engine kind of whirring away, but it actually feels quick.
And the CR-V feels a little bit quieter out on the road. The cabin noise seems to be a little bit more muted than this guy right here. But fuel economy is always important for everybody out there. We've averaged about 38 to 39 miles per gallon in our RAV4 long term. What did you get when you did your fuel economy loop in this one?
I got around 36.
Okay.
Like, on the high end, I know I got around almost 40. So
Okay, and what did you get in the CRV?
So, I mean, on this short little drive, I think the highest I got was 37.
Okay.
But on the low end, it got like 27 when I was really hustling around the corners.
That makes sense.
It's not really
Yeah.
fair, like in this kind of
Right,
testing
it's a pretty
environment.
short loop.
And journalists have been driving it in and out. So, I mean, obviously, in the real world, they're going to be pretty close.
Yeah, they will be. But this one has a real mechanical all-wheel drive system, and you can definitely tell that. So when you floor it, you can get a little bit of torque steer in the RAV4 sometimes, especially if the surface isn't quite perfect.
Right.
And if you're out on snow or gravel or ice, there's definitely that scramble for traction up front before it tries to sense it in the rear. And this is totally drama-free. This feels exactly like the regular CRV. And I actually have to say, like out on that rodeo course where there was loose traction, I liked this better than the turbo CRV.
Really?
Even though it was a little slower because of that low end torque. It definitely has a good feel low end, but like you said, at the top end, it kind of seems to fall apart a little bit. So if your money was on the line, which one would you pick?
So I would actually...
get the RAV4. Or sorry, CRV.
Oh, okay,
I
because
would get
you
the
already
CRV.
have the RAV4, and that's the thing is I would rather get the RAV4 because even though this car is like $5,000 more, I mean, people don't really pay sticker on these. I like the features. I like the features on this car, the pano sunroof, the cooled seats, the 360 camera. You can't get that on the Honda for any price, and I would easily pay it for this car,
Honda
and
is
it's
a little
faster.
bit less expensive, but
Right.
like they were saying in their product comparison, they were saying this is less expensive than this guy right here, which is true, but we don't have the cooled seats, we don't have the heated rear seats, we don't have the pano roof.
So, I mean, you're getting all the features, and that's
Right.
why you're paying more for
Right.
it.
I would say value is actually pretty similar
Yeah.
between the two of them. But I like the CRV's mechanical all-wheel drive system, and I have to say I really like the bigger back seat. I think those are
Yeah.
the two things for me: the big back seat and the real system. I would miss the spare tire because we have used it in our long-term RAV4. If you want to check out our other RAV4 videos, there are a ton on the channel as well. But if I had to do this over again, I would buy the
get the
CRV
CRV.
Hybrid. Maybe when the RAV4 Hybrid is done later this summer, maybe we'll get a CRV Hybrid. I don't know. So your final word is RAV4 Hybrid?
I would pick the RAV4 Hybrid, but keep in mind if you actually like need to put like child seats in the back, the CRV would be the better choice.
Or if you want better traction in the
Right.
winter, then CRV right here. But they're both great options this segment. And how do they find you? So look for Sofyan over at Redline Reviews, youtube.com/redline.
So it's youtube.com/the Redline.
The Redline.
You were very
there
close.
we go. Very close. Anyway, we will see you all later.